Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be giving you a gameplay overview of the Affliction Warlock in the Legion Alpha. Of course, Legion's an alpha, so are we going to be focusing on raid stuff? Are we going to be focusing on the raw numbers? No, we're going to be focusing on the gameplay and seeing whether the spec itself is fun. How am I going to do that? Well, first of all, we're going to cover the very base rotation, like the 4 or 5, core buttons. After that, we're going to be looking at all of the abilities. Then we're going to be looking at the talents, then we're going to be looking at the artifact weapon, its passive, its main ability, and all of its traits. So to start us off, let's have a look at the core abilities, and they really are quite simple. So here's Agony. It inflicts increasing damage on the target, causing up to 40,000 shadow damage over 18 seconds. The damage starts off low, and it ramps up high. Basically, this starts at 1 stack, and it's got a maximum amount of 20 stacks. Now, when it does damage, you've got a chance to regain a soul shard, and if you reapply Agony before the stacks drop, then you'll maintain your stacks, meaning you're going to maintain a high damage Agony. That's pretty good. Next, we've got Corruption. This just deals damage over time. Pretty damn simple. And then we move on to Unstable Affliction. This costs 1 soul shard, and you've got a total of 5 soul shards. It says here that it does 37,000 shadow damage over 8 seconds, and if the effect is reapplied, then the remaining damage is added to the new Unstable Affliction. Do read there that it doesn't increase the duration of that Unstable Affliction. It refreshes it to the 8 seconds, but adds the damage. That means if you do 4 of these on top of each other, it's going to be 8 seconds of extreme damage by the time you get to the very final Unstable Affliction. That's going to be key to how I think parts of this spec might actually play out. And then finally we have Drain Life. I believe Drain Soul used to be the filler or something like that. I actually don't really play Affliction on live, but Drain Life is your new filler, so drains life from the target, causing shadow damage and restoring 21% of your health over 4.88 seconds. It restores quite a lot of health, but you're actually going to be expending quite a lot of health on Life Tap, which will restore 30% of your maximum mana at the cost of 10% of your maximum health, so try not to kill yourself with that. As far as demons go, it's pretty much the same affair. We've just, we've got these 4 guys. And summoning them costs 1 soul shard. Now, I don't really know how much soul shards are different from how they are in live, but basically, you generate them with Agony, and you spend them with Unstable Affliction. So if I was to give you a quick little sort of motivating example here, and by the way, don't pay attention to these floating tormented souls, I will explain what the hell's up with them pretty damn soon. So, Semi-Void guy in, we're going to do an Agony, then a Corruption, and then we're going to be filling with Drain Life. Right now, I don't actually have any soul shards because I spent one. There we go, I've just gained a soul shard, so I'll do another round of life taps, and we'll use our Unstable Affliction after this. So here's what Unstable Affliction looks like. And you can see it does pretty good damage. I'm just going to reapply my Agony there so it doesn't fall off, which obviously would be pretty damn terrible. So Agony's now at 15 stacks, meaning its damage is really ramping up quite high. Now, you've noticed I'm pretty lax about doing my Unstable Afflictions. At the end of the day, do you really need to cast them instantly on cooldown? No, you don't. And in fact, I think there might be a little bit of a parallel with the Destruction Warlock here. So I'm just going to pull my pet back and explain this. You can pull up to a maximum of 5 of these soul shards. And the Unstable Afflictions, even if you do 5 of them in a row, the 5th one will last 8 seconds, but will have the remaining damage from all of the other ones kind of added onto it, because that's how Unstable Affliction works. What does that mean? Well, it means you're going to want to pull your soul shards until you can pop a cooldown to use them in tandem with, or have a raid cooldown, or some sort of modifying effect, maybe an external whatever, that will buff up your DPS. So let's just do a whole bunch of Unstable Corruptions on this training dummy, and we'll have a look at the tooltip. So you can see here the amount of shadow damage increases. The numbers are so big because this is like a level 60 dummy that I'm hitting here. Obviously, if we were doing that much damage every second, it would be a little bit OP. So in terms of gameplay, you're just going to be dotting up everything, and you're going to be wanting to multi-dot as much as you can with Agony. That means more soul shards. More soul shards means more damage. We also have Seed of Corruption, so this will do AoE and apply Corruption to a whole bunch of targets. Now, the seed itself will detonate early if you do a certain amount of damage to it, so I just applied... Oh, wait, that's the Raiders training dummy, so that's tuned up to, level 110. So if I put the Seed of Corruption in this, and we do enough damage, then boom, and it explodes and applies Corruption to every target. Now that that's done, let's have a look through all of the abilities, and you see many things that are decently familiar. So, Agony, we've already covered that. Banish is a demon. Burning Rush is a talent, but, well, it's this. We all remember that. We've got Command Demon, which will command your demon to do its special thing. Corruption, which we've already covered. Healthstone, which is, well, it's a Healthstone. Soulwell, Demonic Gateway. Drain Life, Enslave Demon, Eye of Kilrog, Fear, lots of similar things here. Health Funnel, Life Tap, so that's just sacrificing some health for some mana. I'll cover Phantom Singularity when we get onto talents. Ritual of Return will take you back to your class order hall. Ritual of Summoning brings up your portal. Seed of Corruption is, the corruption sort of multi-dot thingy. We've got Soul Harvest, which is one of my talent cooldowns, refills 5 soul shards instantly. Imagine doing 5 corruptions, then five unstable afflictions, popping Soul Harvest, doing 5 more, while you have, like, heroism on so that the tick rate of the dots is going insane or something like that. You could do some pretty cool stuff. Next, we've got Soulstone, which is what it is. Summon Demon, brings in your demons. Summon Doomguard, so that's 1 cooldown. Summon Infernal, it's another cooldown. Unending Breath, obviously very key DPS talent. Unending Resolve, hardens your skin, reducing all damage taken by 40% and giving you immunity to erupts and silences for 8 seconds. My voice kind of died there. And then finally, Unstable Affliction, which we have already covered. Though I didn't mention that if it's dispelled, the Dispeller will be suffering shadow damage and will be silenced. Let's have a look at the talents, and these talents are going to follow in a theme that we have seen with a lot of the Legion talents, where there are easy options and there are slightly harder options. I would imagine they're going to balance things so that the harder options do a bit more damage, such that if you just want to make a simple enough spec for rambling around in the world, you can do that, but if you want an ultra-competitive rating spec, you will be increasing the complexity of your class. So let's start off with the 15 talents and Haunt. So then, a Ghostly Soul haunts the target, dealing 45,000 shadow damage. If the target dies within 15 seconds, Haunt's cooldown is reset. Pretty simple, another button to hit that does damage. Next we have Wreath and Agony. Agony's damage may now ramp up twice as high. That means your Agonies are going to be more powerful. And since you're going to be applying Agonies to everything, it's pretty hard to mess up with this talent. Next, Drain Soul. So this will replace Drain Life, and it does 51,000 shadow damage, but only restores 7% of your health over 4.88 seconds, which is less than the 21% that Drain Life will give you, and if the target dies while channeling, this will give you 1 soul shard. Next up, we've got Contagion, so Unstable Affliction will also increase the damage that you deal to the target by 5%. Moving on, Absolute Corruption. Corruption is now permanent, so that's going to make this spec a good bit easier to play, because you'll never have to worry about not reapplying a corruption, though that's only going to be saving you one global cooldown worth of damage every 20 seconds, or maybe it's 14, whatever. So I don't really know how viable that will be. Certainly it's quality of life if that's what you're going for. Next, we've got Mana Tap. Consumes 40% of your mana to do 15% increased damage for 20 seconds. Now then, 40% of your current mana, guess what doesn't use mana? Unstable Affliction. So some of your gameplay could be, getting 4 soul shards, mana tapping to get that 15% increased damage, blowing your Unstable Afflictions, and if you need mana back at the end of that, I suppose you can always life tap. Pretty damn cool. That's an opportunity to create some synergy within the spec. Next up, Soul Leech. So Drain Life and Drain Soul are going to give you and your pet an Absorb Shield based on 30% of the damage they dealt for 15 seconds. So that's just a nice little passive survivability thing. Next up, Mortal Coil. Horrifies an enemy target into fleeing. It incapacitates them for 3 seconds, but more importantly, gives you, or maybe less importantly, gives you 37,000 health back. Next up, Siphon Life. Siphon the target's life essence, doing 7,500 damage over 15 seconds, and then it heals you for each time it does damage. I assume that would be a pretty strong heal because its damage isn't particularly ginormous. You've got Sow the Seeds. Seed of Corruption will now consume a soul shard if available to embed Demon Seed in 4 nearby enemies. So basically, Demon Seed is going to cost one soul shard, but if you do it to 1 enemy, it will then blow up, and do that to 4 other enemies, and they will then blow up and maybe do that to more enemies? Don't know how much that changes. Kind of hard to test with training dummies, but that's just more AoE essentially, but at the cost of a soul shard. So I suppose that would actually hurt your single target. And then we've got Soul Harvest, refill 5 soul shards instantly. This seems like a big single target DPS cooldown. And you'll notice we've got survivability, AoE damage, single target, so I imagine you'll be swapping talents a lot, but that's fine because you can actually instantly just click in these to swap them without a tomb or anything like that. Next up, 75, Demonic Circle. This is just your Demonic Circle teleport thingy. Burning Rush is a talent, so, 50% movement speed, but you lose health. And then Dark Pact. Sacrifice 20% of your demon's current health to shield you for 400% of the sacrificed health for 20 seconds. If there's no demon, then it takes away your health, and you can use it while you're suffering from control impairing effects. So basically, survivability. Then we've got Grimoire of Supremacy. This empowers your demon, causing it to have 20% increased health and 20% increased damage. That's just simple free deeps, so I'm using it right now. We've got Grimoire of Service. Instantly summons a second demon who fights for 25 seconds. The demon will instantly use one of its special abilities when summoned. This is basically, as an example, if you were to have a Fell Hunter, this would give you a second interrupt. You've got the interrupt on Fell Hunter A and the interrupt on Fell Hunter B. And then Grimoire of Service. Sacrifice your demon to gain demonic power, which will cause your spell to do an additional 7,500 shadow damage to the target and other enemies within 8 yards, and lasts for an hour or until you summon a demon, so basically, demonless. Onwards to the level 100 talents, we've got Soul Effigy. This creates a Soul Effigy bound to the target, which is attackable by only the Warlock. Damage taken by the Effigy is replicated on the original target. I would imagine that this is done, so obviously it's going to be a DPS increase. It seems very similar to, is it Void Prism? That mage talent which summons like a big crystal that the mage then attacks. And then we've got Phantom Singularity. Places a Phantom Singularity above the target which consumes the life of all enemies within 25 yards, dealing a whole bunch of damage and healing you for 30% of the damage done. I'll show you that in a second. And finally, Demonic Servitude, so you can maintain control over your greater demons indefinitely, allowing you to have permanent Doom Guards and Infernals. As much as that sounds cool, I think it's pretty damn boring. Let's use Phantom Singularity. So I'll click on this guy, use Phantom Singularity, and boom! It will deal damage to everything, including these guys. What are these Tormented Souls? Well, it's a good thing you ask. Let's bring up my artifact weapon. So then, equip. Killing enemies empowers the Dreadwind Harvester, increasing your shadow damage by 10% and doubling the power of all passive effects from the Harvester. What's the passive effect? Well, Tormented Souls periodically attempt to escape the Harvester, killing them refunds 10% mana. I don't know how much use that actually is. And the reason why I say that is because it's going to take longer to kill one of these guys than it is to use a global cooldown on Life Tap. So perhaps your AoEs, or things like that, are going to passively do damage to these guys. Maybe you'll have a way to, like, DPS scum on these guys, but I don't think it's the most interesting thing ever. Maybe if they were to give you a 10-second buff that increased your damage, or give you, some free soul shards if you hit them, maybe if they would balance around that, then it would be more interesting. Let's look at the actual artifact weapon itself, though. So unlike last time, I've actually set DX Story to now record my mouse, so you can see what the hell I'm talking about. Its main effect here is Reap Soul. 40-yard range, 45-second cooldown, deals damage every 3 seconds for 42 seconds, and each time it deals damage, it increases in its damage frequency by 6.66%. I'll just cast one of these off here for you, so there you go, Reap Soul. And while we talk about the rest of these, if you're really interested, you can watch that training dummy. So I'm first going to move to the right, and we'll just go through these minor things. So increase the crit strike for your Unstable Affliction by 4% per point. Increase the detonation damage of your Seed of Corruption by 5%. When your Unstable Affliction expires, it has a 25% chance to reapply itself. That could get super powerful if you have nice RNG. We've got Drained to a Husk, increases the damage of your drains by 4%. We've got Imitable Agony, this will increase the damage of your agony by 5%. And then finally, Mere Flesh reduces the damage you take by 4%. And that leads us on to Harvester of Souls. Your drains have a chance to trigger on all targets affected by your corruption for 3 seconds. Now that I think about it, if you've got Drain Life on, that means you're going to be getting loads of health back. Anyway, let's move on to the rest of the tree. So, Compound Interest. Each agony and corruption you cast increases the damage of your next Unstable Affliction by 10%. I wonder if that stacks so that if you reapply them both, you get 20% out of your next Unstable Affliction. Unfortunately, though, I don't have the artifact power to test this out. We've got Long Dark Night of the Soul. Increases the healing from your drain spells by 10%, which leads us on to Soul Flame. Whenever you kill a target, its soul bursts into flames, dealing Shadow Flame damage to everything around it. Going down, we've got Shadowy Incantations, increases your shadow damage dealt by 4%. Hideous Corruption increases the damage of your corruption by 4%. Sweet Souls, your Healthstone fully heals you. Any party members using a Healthstone also get a heal as well, which seems super good, now that I think about it. We've got Perdition, increases the crit chance of your Agony, Corruption, Drain, and Unstable Affliction by 3%. Which finally leads us over to... Actually, no, it doesn't. We've got Inherently Unstable, which increases the damage of Unstable Affliction by 4%. And that moves on to Wrath of Consumption. Killing an enemy causes your damage over time effects to deal 2% more damage, and this ability stacks up to 5 times. Right, so that's what your artifact is going to be looking like. So overall, the way this spec is going to play, I think, is kind of like a dot version of how Destruction plays. In that, with Destruction, at least the last time I properly played it in Mists of Pandaria, when it was AOP and be pretty fun, you would get as many of those, Burning Embers as you could, and you'd pull them all up, and then you use Dark Soul, and then fire off your Embers, and ideally you'd be using Dark Soul at the same time that there was a raid cooldown, or maybe the boss did something which increased your damage, and it did pretty insane deeps if you actually managed to do it right. Certainly somebody who was good at lining that shit up with a cooldown would do way more damage than someone who just, you know, used a Chaos Bolt every time that their Burning Ember actually appeared. So if we just look at this training tummy here, you know, put these two things on, we're going to be waiting for soul shards to appear. I may as well throw on Reap Soul. Really not getting any soul shards at all. What is going on? I don't know. So there's Agony. I'll reapply that after this. There we go. All our dots reapplied. Lovely stuff. We're at 1 soul shard. I've noticed soul shard generation is... I don't know if it's super slow as it is, because I can't really compare it to, like, current day Affliction. It seems kind of slow, I suppose. Again, I don't really have much comment on that, honestly, just that it doesn't seem that fast. That said, what was it, Burning Cinders? The thing in Warlords which made your Chaos Bolts basically dime a dozen because you got so many Chaos Embers. Or not Chaos Embers, whatever the hell they're called. From what I hear from people, that actually took a lot of the identity and fun out of the spec, so I imagine they don't want to avoid that problem. So right now, you know, I've been dotting, I've got 4 soul shards. Now that I've got 5, I'm, you know, probably just going to use my Unstable Afflictions. As you can see, that damage really does ramp up. And what I'm going to do here is cast Soul Harvest, which gives even more Unstable Afflictions. And if you look at that, it's getting to the stage where it's doing some pretty mental damage. And essentially, that kind of combined up DPS, you know, when you get loads of those, is going to be super powerful. And it's what I imagine this spec would revolve around. Honestly, I like that. I think it's, you know, I think that's pretty fun. You know, I'll just use some cooldowns here, because I may as well show you what they're like in the video. You know, we've got things like Health Funnel, stuff like that. There's Seed of Corruption, which I think I've already shown you. Basically, that's a look at how it plays. I think it's very easy to get your head around. To give you guys, you know, a bit of talk here, I feel like I know how to play this spec to a decent enough level, and it hasn't taken that long at all. I mean, I've not played Affliction properly ever, and it just seems to be pretty simple, but also pretty fun and pretty satisfying. My hope is that things like, where's that talent, Mana Tap, that things like that really work it in, so you'd want to be Mana Tapping before, you know, you do your kind of big dick DPS, whatever the fuck you want to call it, by, you know, using all those soul shards. Overall, decently fun spec. Hopefully we will see some fun iteration on it throughout the alpha. I think it's in a decent enough state now. If you play Affliction currently, let me know what you think about the spec. And there was a few commenters in one of my videos who were sad about Drain Soul not being a thing. Well, Drain Soul is still a thing, it's just an alternative to Drain Life. I think some people missed the spell effect. Anyway, guys, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video, or at least found it useful. Stay tuned for loads of Legion content on the channel, and there's probably stuff you missed. I've been doing 3 videos a day for the last few days. It's pretty mental, so check that out. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.